Watch this. The easiest way to win points isn't more spin or speed. It's a backhand placement trick most players completely overlook.
晚上好，
Good evening. In amateur matches, placement is the easiest way to win points, easier than adding more spin or speed. Most rallies go cross-court, so straight-line shots catch opponents off guard. Let me walk you through how I use them.
尤其是反手
Next,
位。
let's start on the backhand side. My go-to pattern looks like this. I open with a wide cross-court backhand, pushing the ball out to a big angle. Then on the very next ball, I switch to a straight line down the line. Watch first ball, wide cross-court angle. Second ball, straight line. This cross-court then straight tactic is one I rely on heavily in matches. The wide cross-court forces my opponent to move, and the sudden switch to the straight line catches them mid-recovery. It's a simple two-ball pattern, but it's devastatingly effective.
这个战术我相对来说运用的比较多一点。就
So
第
the
一板
first
打
ball
到
goes
斜
deep
线
cross-court at a wide angle.
角度相对
The second ball redirects down the line. Unless my opponent's backhand is truly terrible and I can just keep attacking one spot, I change direction within one or two shots. After I switch to the straight line, it jams them. Their forehand can't get into position to produce any real quality. That's why I change direction on the backhand side so frequently.
容易他正手出不来质量，所以我反手变直线的概率是非常大的。
Now let me share exactly how I redirect to the straight line. The key is where you contact the ball. When I want to go straight, I don't hit directly behind the ball. I shift my contact point slightly. Think of the ball as a clock face. For a cross-court rip to the wide angle, I contact slightly to the left of center, the ball's left side. But when I want to redirect down the line, I shift and contact slightly to the right of center instead.
球的正后方
That small adjustment in contact point is what changes the trajectory without needing a big swing change.
如果我要是变直线的时候，我可能就是击打这个球偏右一点的位置。一
So
个
to
是正
recap,
后方，
dead center behind the ball is neutral. Shift left for a wide cross-court angle, shift right for the straight line. This is the first key to a reliable direction change. Hitting dead center and just pushing forward makes the ball fly long, you lose control. Offset your contact point slightly and the ball stays on the table. Now, the second key is your swing direction.
稍微偏一点击球点。这是第一个问题。第二个问题呢，就是我们变直线的时候，我们的发力方向很重要。你看，我给大家
Watch as
做
I
一个
alternate between cross-court and straight line. Cross-court, straight, cross-court, straight. Notice the difference. On the straight line ball, there's a distinct sideways wiping action, almost like brushing across the ball rather than driving through it. This is exactly why some players redirect so smoothly. They wipe to the side instead of punching forward. Now think about why your own straight line attempts sail long.
有一点抹。
If you're pushing straight forward when you change direction, the ball has nowhere to go but off the end of the table. Instead, add that lateral wipe. Brush slightly to the side at contact. Watch what happens. The angle opens up, the ball curves onto the table, and your consistency goes way up. The wider the sideways component in your stroke, the more margin you create. So the feeling you want is not a forward push but a sideways brush, almost painting across the ball at the moment of contact.
这样呢，线路又大，上台率又高，对吧？你可以稍微带一点
The
侧
key
抹
is to avoid a pure forward and back motion. At the moment of contact, direct some of your force to the right side, a lateral wipe rather than a straight push. Watch this demonstration. See how I brush slightly sideways? The ball lands with a wide angle and high consistency. Now watch what happens if I push straight forward, the ball flies long. But with that sideways component, the angle opens up and the ball drops onto the table reliably. Wider angle, higher consistency.
上台率又高，
That lateral wipe is the second essential ingredient.
是吧，球友们？角度又大，上台率又高。那么我觉得
Now,
我
if
们
you're
是这
hitting
样
a flat drive rather than a rip with spin, there's an extra detail. After you wipe to the side, press the racket face slightly downward at the same time.
你打完之后，
Watch sideways and down together. This applies to both shakehand and penhold grips. Wipe to the side while angling the face down.
侧的同时，
That downward press adds a bit of arc to the ball and keeps it from sailing long. You need this because a flat drive has less natural spin to pull the ball down.
往下压一点，
The ball machine feed here is soft, but imagine a hard incoming shot from a real opponent. Without that downward press on a flat redirect, you'd miss long almost every time. Build this habit now.
因为现在就是发球机给我发过来这个球很柔和，正常来说，这个发球机过来球如果是人打过来的很长，你这么打是特别容易失误的。第二个呢，
When you're ripping with spin, the adjustment is different. On a cross-court rip, my wrist opens up fully, a big turnover through the ball. But for a straight-line rip, I stop the wrist earlier. Watch the racket face. On the cross-court, it rotates all the way through. On the straight line, I cut that rotation short. If you let the wrist turn too far, the ball curves back cross-court and you lose the line. So the feeling is, drive forward, push into the ball, and stop. Don't let the wrist roll over or sweep sideways. Lock it in place right at contact and punch through. The moment you feel contact, freeze the wrist. No extra turnover, no extra sweep. That early stop keeps the trajectory straight and prevents the ball from drifting long.
抹呀或者转动太大，直接往前顶，手腕停止，不要再收过来，不要再转出去。这么一转，弧线特别容易长，及时的给它停止住，这一点也是很重要的。在对方
Then here's a match principle. The harder your opponent attacks, the more you should redirect. When they commit to a big shot, you borrow their power. A small redirect is all you need, and their energy does the rest. Meanwhile, their recovery is slow because a powerful stroke takes time to complete. Their body is still rotating, their weight is still shifting, and your straight-line redirect lands before they can reset. That's the ideal moment to change direction. What I don't recommend is winding up for a big punch to force the direction change yourself. In matches, that leads to too many errors. Instead, stay close to the table, keep your stroke compact, and use their incoming force. Watch the difference. This is an active, loaded redirect from far back, risky.
产生一定的距离，这个叫主动变现。主动变现，借力变现就是在前面。你看，
Now compare that to what I do most often. I get my hand out front and catch the ball on the rise. Watch rising point, rising point, rising point. This is my go-to. Why? Because when you intercept the ball early, you combine their pace with a short, compact punch forward and a small sideways push. The stroke stays tiny. You're borrowing their energy and redirecting it with just a nudge to the side. The ball comes off your racket incredibly fast, and your opponent gets jammed. They simply have no time to react. The key is you must catch that rising point and borrow their force, because your opponent still has to recover from their own stroke. If their reset is slow and you jam them with a quick redirect, they're stuck. Even if they scramble the ball back, you drop the next one to their backhand and the point is over. So remember the principle. The harder they attack, the more I borrow their power and redirect at the rising point.
对方不发力的时候，我想发力的时候，尽量以他的斜线或中路为主，因为线路长，你加力不容易产生失误，好不好？你为什么会
Why do so many backhand rallies go long? Your racket face is too open. You're striking straight through the back of the ball, pushing it flat, and that's why it sails long. Whether you're driving or looping, you need to contact the upper middle part of the ball right here. Watch, with the same amount of force, when I close the racket face and press down into the upper half, the ball stays on the table. Now I open the face just slightly, same force, and it flies long. Your backhand going out is directly tied to your racket angle. So let's tie it all together. We covered 4 keys today. Offset your contact point to create angle, use sideways friction to change direction, distinguish between a hitting redirect and a ripping redirect, and borrow your opponent's force by catching the ball at its rising point. And when rallies keep sailing long, close that racket face and drive through the top of the ball.